Notification has been sent out, and everyone is free to talk here now. As usual, I give people a few minutes to shuffle in. Hope everyone's doing well. I'm seeing some new names popping up in the chat and in the VC. We have Lewis on Twitch, as usual, in the chat. Give it another minute or so, and then we'll get started. How has everybody's May been? Because mine was busy.
Did you delete that Rickroll from the chat? Someone sent the Rickroll into the chat and it's now gone.
Yeah, I don't know. I tried to mouse over it, but it looked like it wasn't working, so maybe I deleted it because it didn't work. I didn't delete it. What does the mod log say? Looks like it was deleted by the person who posted it. All right, I think it's been long enough waiting for people to shuffle in, so time to get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our 11th monthly Campfire Dev Chat. If you haven't been here before, since I did say I do see a few new people, we do these the first Saturday of every month, and they are basically our developer Q&A. We have a form that you can submit questions to beforehand. If you happen to not be here the exact hour that we do these for about anywhere from like 1.5 to 2 hours is generally how long we go for. These are streamed on Twitch at the same time on my channel, so the replays will be up on Twitch for the week afterward, but we also re-upload the videos to YouTube so that anybody who hasn't seen or wasn't able to get there the week of on Twitch is then still able to see the replays after the fact, and you can find the channel in the message that I post at the end of every chat, because we lock the chat room when it's not in use and reopen it when it is. And the very last message I post is always, hey, here's the Twitch channel, here's the stream archive on YouTube, here's the form you can submit questions to. And as you can see, Type has also reposted the link to submit questions to if you want to do that. We will also answer questions from the Discord and Twitch chat, though, so you don't need to post something in that form if you are here already and haven't posted something yet. So, how's everyone enjoying the latest release? 0.10.7. I will admit I was not there for when we released it because I happened to be out of town that same weekend, and I, I scheduled the trip to be out of town the week before when I set up the release date months ago. So I just completely forgotten, like, oh yeah, this release is next week, and I should probably be there for it. And I scheduled something else during the same week that I couldn't bail out of. So I was like, oh crap. Well, I hope all the other devs can take care of it, and thankfully they did. So a shout out to those guys who were helping out with that. I forget who all was online at the time, but I know MCO always has to help with that. Then I think Warp was on. I know Hector helped out a bit, although he's not part of the dev team, but he does help out with some of these things. I think Doom was there. Who else was there? I don't want to leave anyone out. Who else helped with that release? I know Sog did the announcement, of
Roadrunner,
course.
Soga, Roadrunner, and I also.
All right, yeah. I will note that Sog is not here with us at the moment. He's usually the other one who's talking a lot. So I hope I'm not the only one talking the whole time. You can unmute yourselves, developers, if you have anything to chime in with. Vahalal says, haven't tried it yet. Cupcake says, I also haven't tried it yet. Mr. T says, same, LOL. What are we doing here, then, if nobody's played it? Hellgraph says, I've been playing the update since it released after having not played it in like a year or two, Lamau. All right, well. Lewis is terrible. He's played it and it's been terrible. High Reveal is, in parentheses, still terrible. What do you mean? It's also still just the intro. Or the prologue, whatever we ended up calling it. Alright, if you haven't played the update yet, some of the big changes are in Sog's announcement. One that I do want to highlight is the changes to engine and mass balancing of ships and engines. I believe every engine was given, a 50% increase in its strength, but most ships were also given a considerable increase in their mass, which the end result of that is that the larger ships should end up being slower than they were before, but a lot of the smaller ships will be faster, and anything in between is going to be around the same speed as it was previously. The reason we did this is because we've noticed for a long time now that as you increase the size of your ship, you get a lot more powerful because you have a lot bigger weapons, you have a lot more health, but you're not really that much slower. Even if the base ship ends up being slower, you can usually still install upgraded engines to be just as fast as some of the smaller ships in the game. So at that point, there's effectively zero reason at all to ever fly a smaller ship, because the bigger ships are just as fast, can take more damage, and can deal more damage. I don't know if the change we made is going to be perfect. That, I'm sure, will come with feedback. We'll figure out if we still need to make any tweaks or not. But that was the reason that change was made, just so that we have a bit more of a progression in speed. As you get bigger, you also get slower, in exchange for the greater firepower and hit points.
What he said.
Oh, Sog is here.
Hello.
Welcome. I was just saying you weren't here, and I was just going to be talking to myself the entire time.
No, I...
Because all the other devs are shy.
Yeah, no, we gotta break them out of that.
Don't worry, we still love you guys. Earl says, wait, so if we don't buy new ships, our old ones go super fast. Yes.
Yeah,
if you if you have an old save file and you upgrade to the new version, then basically all of your ships will have gained a 50% increase in their speed. So don't be naughty. Don't be naughty. And I highly suggest starting a new save file. If you have an old save file with the faster ships, then, go crazy. Yeah, Harold says naughty is fun.
I knew something like that was going to happen, but then, like, the first message about it in the Discord. Some guy has an arrow or something like that, and they hit afterburner, and they're already like 50 screens away. And I was like, wait a minute.
Yeah. Lurch says my old modded ships are going to go crazy now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
I know
another
some
thing too.
people.
You'll probably have to, if you have a plugin that adds ships and engines, you'll have to rebalance them around what the game is doing now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that point, the ships would probably be slower though, because thrusters got that 1.5 times increase with the masses becoming heavier. So plug-in ships, if you're using thrusters that aren't, well, I mean,
I'm
it
saying
depends if you're
like
using.
plug-in ships with plug-in engines. Those are going to be
Okay.
the same as they were before. If you put plug-in
Okay.
engines on a vanilla ship, they're going to be slower than they were before.
Yeah.
But if you put vanilla engines on a plug-in ship, it's going to be faster than it was before.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. T says you can just save edit anyway, but basically if you start a new save and give yourself some credits, you can enjoy the game as if you aren't starting so fresh. Yeah, you can do that if
Yeah.
you want.
And something I do want to kind of look at is, and this is, I think it might help for those of people who do want to start a new save. Go revisit the campaign. Go play that out, and like if you haven't sent like something in the feedback box, or if you just want to like kind of talk about it with other people, kind of check out the balances with the new mass changes, with the new fighter changes, because um, there's gonna be a lot of people who, if they've had a save for a long time and they don't want this to like directly affect them, which might not be the case. Maybe people are having fun flying around at Mach 10, but kind of test things out. And let us know how the balance of the campaign is still, because we do want to revisit that as well someday. And I imagine that come up in like a couple bit of the later questions here and during the chat. But yeah, was the campaign rewritten? Um, I'm asking more so like balance of it, because since you've last played, or a lot of people in here who have last played, I would imagine it would have been a while ago. That's not like for everybody here, but I imagine a lot of people who are returning to Endless Sky or who have been playing for a while have different experiences. So people who have played like even just a year ago compared to people who have played like yesterday, or people who have played 2 years ago, the balance is going to be a bit different because of all these indirect changes. I mean, well, direct changes to ships and weapons, and all the balance changes overall have been happening over time. So as time goes on, the campaign's probably going to tip one way or the other, or stay the same. So just kind of let us know on the balance side of things, and I imagine that'd be like another feedback survey at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So well, we talked about. So I know it was only 7 minutes, but talked about the mass changes. Anything else?
I
Or
mean, I just kind of introduced the concept of the stream because I noticed there's a lot of new names I didn't
oh,
recognize from
okay,
before. Then
yeah, definitely.
I said like, hey, we made a release last weekend. Has anybody played it yet? What do you think? Big highlight is the mass changes, and then we were just going over
Mhm.
that. That's when you hopped in, so you didn't miss
Okay,
anything really.
yeah, the mass changes and
Are the
the fighter
spreadsheets up to
change.
date? Ha, no.
No,
I need to update those. They honestly
every
haven't been
time.
up to date for a while.
Yeah, every time you said you've updated them, I bet like a month later we've already made them obsolete again. Anyway.
Yeah, I just need to like redo it from the ground up
Yeah.
because all that is manual input, which is a pain. I just have to like write a program that will scroll through all the data files and
Yeah.
throw everything into an actual spreadsheet instead
Yeah,
of me doing it manually.
Nicholas. I saw when you joined the Discord yesterday. Yeah, some people find other species in the game like the Hive before they even find the main campaign. We've
That's what
done
I
it.
did.
Do what?
That's what I did.
Oh,
I started the
yeah.
main campaign with like
Well,
3
that's right.
showcases.
That was your first comment on Steam.
Yeah.
But since like over the years, we have added like ways to help find the main campaign a little bit better with like
Mm-hmm.
spaceport nudges or missions that lead to the south where it is. Again, I think it's going to be mostly that right now only a third of the campaign is, well, the whole campaign is done, but only a third playable part of it is in the game. So once you get the other two playable parts, it'll probably be easier to kind of find, like, stumble upon it, especially when right now the south is the Free World's location. So if you're in Republic space or Syndicate space, then that will kind of tie in also. So
Yeah, and Mr. T points out sometime in the far future there will be more storylines, so you'll be able to stumble on them
yeah.
easier.
Oh yeah, and not only would like the two intros or whatever to the other two parts be available, like there might also be missions that are kind of those lower background missions that the free worlds already have right now that we help to make it easier. So it wouldn't just be, oh, the Syndicate campaign gets the intro and you have to find that, and oh, the Republic one. Like there also might be missions that lead to the like quote the North or to Syndicate space or something like that. I imagine. Yeah, EV was um very simple in how their campaigns work. It's you accept a mission and then you start to begin a whole campaign.
Yeah.
So, which is kind of what we do, but over the years we've added like a couple more like nudges to those missions. But we don't want to be like, hey, this is the campaign mission. Do the campaign.
I mean, you don't really get railroaded into anything like you could in
No, yeah.
EV. Like, because with the Free Worlds campaign, you have to do a bunch of missions for them, and then they're like, hey, do you want to join us? And
Yeah.
you can say yes or no. After that point, yes, you're kind of stuck there.
Yeah.
But at least for the time being.
Well, yeah, that's the thing is we don't want the campaign to be what do you call it? We don't need to be forced into it, so the world won't change around you unless you want it to change. And there could be like, I know there's some argument to that where like people would want some things to happen historically over time in the game, which it still kind of happens with side missions and whatnot. But as for the main campaign, it's meant to be opt in.
Yeah, yeah. All right, well, the
But
second question in the submission box is tell us more about the new update, so I guess we should just continue on this.
yeah, I just tangents questions in the story here.
Benny Luck says it's finally here, the 100th Campfire chat. That would take a while to get to.
Yeah.
Any other highlights you want to point out from the update, aside from the mass changes?
I'm sure you mentioned the fighter ones.
I did not.
Oh, I thought I heard you get out about that when I first joined. But the fighter changes where if a fighter is disabled and an AI is not targeting it, it will not get hit.
Yeah.
And if I remember correctly, that includes missiles that were already flying at it once it goes disabled.
It's all projectiles.
Okay.
If
Yeah,
any
sorry, all
projectile was in
projectiles.
flight and the ship became disabled, then it's no longer going to be impacted by that projectile.
So I've seen somewhat of a mixed opinion of this. Of course, there's a couple of discussions on GitHub saying we should be an option, and there's other people saying they really love it and that they came back because of it. But so far, with the feedback I'm getting, that is it's making fighters a little bit easier to work with, but it's not making carriers a go-to. Which we're not trying to make them a go-to, but make them a little bit better. Sure, there's some other ideas with that, but I think the biggest thing I've seen with that change is there are more disabled fighters after a battle, and
which is to be expected.
yeah, I wouldn't say that's a bad thing. I know there's some people who are like, oh, the amount of disabled fighters are crazy after a battle, and it's kind of like, what's crazy about that? Is it might be cluttering up the screen a little bit. Obviously, if you're in Mesicet, and there's also all those drones over there with the Korath. But if we're talking like main campaign missions and whatnot, I think the main concern is people don't want to have to cycle through all the targets to board or trying to board things, which that's kind of part of the game. Is you kind of have to navigate what you're looking to board and what you're not looking to board. So if you're trying to just hit B to board the nearest target, and then there's a fighter there, it's probably going to happen. But I think it's a good change. I feel like we need a little bit more time with it to see kind of the overall appeal of it or not. But it's a positive, right? There's the only negative is that there's more disabled ships, which that's not really a negative, unless you hate things that don't blow up. I don't know.
Yeah. And I will note that we didn't make fighters invincible. If an
No.
explosion goes off near them, like a heavy rocket or a ship explodes near them, they will still take damage. And if the shot that disables them is also powerful enough to destroy them, it will still destroy them. So, like, if a fighter gets hit by a torpedo and it had hardly any health left anyway, it's still going to blow up. It's just that now, if there's, like, lasers or small, like, blaster bolts going around that are low damage projectiles, those aren't going to outright kill the fighter. At the same time, it's disabled, and then after it's disabled, it will not be hit by anything that's not intentionally targeting it.
Well, I think something we bring up often is the concern most people have with fighters is not whether or not they're strong or invincible or not. It's replacing them.
Mm-hmm.
And to an extent, that's kind of part of the game as well. Like you reload ammunition, and I understand people don't like ammunition with that, but we can make it somewhat easier, like we've done with this change so far. We can kind of look at that and see how it's going. But fighters are pretty strong as is, and especially when you're considering like smaller fights, like early game, like Ares or even like the cruisers and carriers, their fighters do a lot. And if you have a ship like that as well, you still do a lot of damage too. It's easy to lose them as well, but they're also easy to do damage if they're ignored. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not that we're trying to make them stronger. It's that we're trying to make them more wieldy. So
It's
why do
also
pirate
really useful
scrappers?
for
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm off a tangent. Why do pirate scrappers charge headlong into a fleet of 100 enemy warships? Uh, A, because we could do a little bit better with the pirate AI, and B,
Hector
why
said the
is there
same thing
100
I
heavy
was thinking.
warships? Drugs.
Hector
Holy.
said drugs. Yeah, they're on something. That's why they're on PCP.
That's
They
kind
think they're
of
invincible.
something we've talked about before too. Is maybe not all pirates just don't care about what they're fighting and charge with like one ship against a navy fleet or something.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't want to remove that entirely. I still think it's funny that in universe, like there's some guy who's in a sparrow is like, I can take on the world and just dies, but they probably all shouldn't be doing that. Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else with the update that was crazy? There was a couple of UI changes. I know that the biggest one would be the camera offset for speed. And sorry, the biggest two, and then the other one is a cloaking one. I think the cloak looks beautiful. I giving it transparency really made it actually feel like a cloak, instead of just a different shade.
Yeah.
But the camera thing on that, and that's not really something I keep on, but I know some people enjoy that as well. So, and the camera thing, for those who don't know, is if you start accelerating one direction, the camera will start to pan with that acceleration, and you can invert which way it does that. So if you start flying fast one direction, it could go behind your ship or in front of it, which to some people it might be a little bit jarring, because the game is supposed to be like around your ship being at the center of the screen, which is why it's a toggle. So, but it's so far in the feedback for that as well. It seems like that should be disabled by default, is what I've seen. But
Mm-hmm. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. One thing I do
we'll
want
see.
to point out from the update, not just because I'm the one who made the code for it, the fact that missions can now mark systems instead of making
Yeah,
it like an actual objective. That's been put to use a good amount of times already.
yeah,
So
that's
if you
not
don't
like that.
know, if you don't know, missions before could create what are called waypoints to certain systems. And what a waypoint does is it puts a marker on your map over that system. And if you enter the system, the marker goes away. But by making it a waypoint, it also becomes a necessary objective for completing the mission. So it says then you must visit all of these waypoints before you can finish the mission. We had a few missions in the game where they were using waypoints for the sake of actually marking the system, but you didn't strictly by the text of the mission need to go to all the waypoints to complete what you needed to do, even though the mission itself still required you to do that. So there would be some like there'd be some missions where you go and do the actual objective you're told to do, but you're still not done the mission because you didn't go and hit all the waypoints along the way, which did not make for a good story in certain things.
yeah.
The new feature is you can now use a different keyword called mark. And if you mark a system, it looks the exact same way as a waypoint, but it's not required. And the mission itself can choose when to unmark a system. And this has already been used for like 2 or 3 missions, I think, that previously they were kind of annoying because of the waypoints, but now they actually make sense with how the mission description states your objective is. And I expect that we will use this feature a lot more in the future.
I mean, the second you merge that into the game on continuous, there was already like 3 PRs that used it.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I found old issues that also could have used it that I didn't even realize were open. I was like, oh, let's fix this. Vahalal is asking about the drug mission. Does it take, or does it give some kind of rainbow color and wavy distortion shader if taken? No. Maybe in the future, but right now it just makes a bunch of hallucinations spawn in, which are these ships that look like flowers and only follow you. Drug shader when at Coronir, says Azure. Rising says, can we make markers that persist after a mission has failed? Well, they'll persist so long as the mission remains in your missions list, but as soon as you land and the mission is removed from your missions list, then the marker will disappear. That's how they currently behave right now. Mr. T says use a hidden mission. If a mission is marked as invisible, it can't display UI elements on the screen. So I'm pretty sure that if you tried to use a marker for a hidden mission, it just wouldn't appear. Although there has been, we have talked about changing that before. I know Tahalch was against it, but he hasn't been around, so we can maybe make that change anyway. I think the idea was to have a separate keyword that says this mission doesn't appear in your active missions list, but will still create UI elements. Either that, or actually that's probably what we would do, because I think right now the reason that invisible missions don't make markers on the map is because you don't want to be able to see the destination for an invisible mission. So I think we would need a separate keyword to say, like, actually, I do want to show stuff for this invisible mission. Lich asks, the game was open source, right? Well, it still is. So we could offer shaders for devs, right? I mean, yeah.
it depends on what you mean by shaders. I was gonna ask why, because that's also what Hurl. Oh, you mean Blender shaders? Okay, I was gonna say if you mean like rendering the actual radiator bloom. Okay, anyway. Oh, someone else unmuted.
Oh, I just wanted to say that we are already using shaders for the visuals and like a million things in game, just not for the sprite creating process.
Okay, okay, that's what you meant. All right. Well, Leek was saying, or Lich or whatever, it was saying I meant to do drug effects with shaders, so I'd imagine that's more.
It's more what Coronair is going toward.
Mm-hmm. I was gonna say, Leaf was asking why to have markers persist after a mission failed, because Hurl said why too. I'm just kind of trying to. Are you saying so people know that they failed the mission? Because at that point, it sounds more like the mission should be more. If it's an important mission, should tell you that it failed better. Because that's kind of along the lines of having a mission list of missions you haven't done yet and need to find, which is a little bit kind of something we don't really want to do. But so that's what I'm curious. Is what do you mean, like a marker for a mission that's already failed? Failed is wrong. I have a mission, or a follow-up is another system, so I'd use a marker to mark the next system after the mission ended.
Well,
Okay, yeah,
would that
because
not just be another mission with a destination to that new location?
yeah. Just couldn't you offer another mission immediately after that that marks the next location?
Mento asks, is making mouse buttons available for rebinding available? Well, you can't right now, and I don't know if anyone's working on it, but I have seen that request a number of times to make it so you can rebind mouse buttons.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of just need somebody to decide to work on that.
There is a chance that the mobile version has something similar. for various gestures. I don't know.
Ryzen
they have
says,
their
but I
own,
don't
like,
want to make it be a mission because it is entirely optional. Not really a mission, more like a hint from a character. So I would like it to be more subtle.
put in an invisible mission, make a mark.
I just talked about that now.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I was-
I feel like saying I want to mark the system on the map, but also say I want it to be subtle or kind of at odds with one another. What I would
yeah.
do is put something in a log and be like, hey, this character said go to here for XYZ reason. If you want a marker, just use a mission with a destination. If you want it to be subtle, then don't. Logs could work? Alright, cool. But yeah, that's what I would do. Alright, let's
I think if there was anything else. There was some balance changes, but
yeah.
those are always happening. So
Doom says sorry I'm late. I thought this was starting an hour later. Well,
you're not
you
the
can
only
show up
one.
anytime. We're not these aren't required. We're not gonna put down on your
No,
record that you were
you're
late.
fired. You're
Yeah, sure,
fired.
just demoted. Nick asks, what is the policy/tempo/expected rate for pull request reviews?
Depends on
Well,
the pull request.
yeah, the development of this game is entirely a hobby project for everyone involved. No one is receiving money for this, so it's highly dependent on what is the pull request, who is able to review what you did, and when are they available. There's
And how
really
much is
no,
in it?
yeah, and how big is it? That type of stuff. What's the general interest in the idea behind the pull request or the change that's being made? It can be very variable. So I can't really give you a good a good answer to that other
Yeah,
than
it is
eh.
very case specific because some PRs might be fix a typo in a word, and other PRs might be add an entire faction to the game. Some might be change the underlying code of the entire game, and some might be change a line in the code. So it depends on what you're trying to modify for the game. If you're trying to modify like a base part of the game, if you're trying to adjust a small part of it, or you're trying to add a large part, yeah, it could be anything.
Yep. All right, well, let's move on to our submitted questions.
The next
No.
one.
Well, yeah, the first one. I guess we technically skipped to the second one, but I was already
Oh,
going over
did
that
we?
anyway. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
First question. Give us some wise words on writing. Do you have anything, Sock?
That's a very open question.
Yeah.
my immediate thought was be open to opinions on it.
So yeah, this is kind of like the question somebody asked us like a few months ago, where it was like, "Do you have any like game development tips?" It's like
Yeah.
that is such a broad question. I feel like we gave a good answer on that one, but it took us a while to actually find our footing on how to answer it.
Another one that I think is kind of important, like from an art perspective as well, is don't be happy with the very first thing you do. Kind of explore with it. If you're trying to write something like, I'm gonna imagine this is for a mission or like a description of a planet or something. But like my cube took me a long time to model it. No. Play around with the writing. If you're trying to write a specific context or like theme, try and look up. Well, obviously, first like jot things down. Don't be afraid to just kind of word vomit. You should always start with that rather than try and make something perfect on your first go. And then try and write some basic examples out. Maybe adjust it, have like a couple of different variances, and then get some opinions on it, and then kind of. I know these are very like generic answers, but I think some of the best advice or wise words on writing and or creating in general is throw everything out to begin with, and then kind of narrow it down over time.
Yeah, Doom says when you have ideas, write them down somewhere as quickly as possible.
Yes, write them down. If you wake up at 4 a.m., which I know I do, and you're like that's your time and your brain works the best, and you're like, oh, I just thought of a way to solve cancer or something. I gotta write that down.
I would say that I don't know exactly. I feel like I can't give super general writing advice. I can say like what my process is. So I guess like the general advice would be try and find a writing process for you that you work well with
Yeah,
and that you
good.
feel helps you produce good work.
Don't use amongst.
Yeah. So for me, basically all of the writing I do for story writing that is for this game. So I am constantly thinking in the aspects of, well, what is the game capable of doing in a mission? What sort of story do I want to tell, just generally speaking? Like, what are the themes I'm going for? What are some general plot points I have in my mind of, like, I want to string these together? What I start with is, I'll write the missions, but I will have blank conversations or blank dialogues. Basically no, like, actual text for the player to read, aside from maybe, like, mission descriptions.
Yeah.
So it's just basically the player has to go from point A to point B. What objectives do they need to do in between to get there? Then, on top of that, or usually at the same time, I'll jot down like very rough, like not even serious text for what am I planning for that mission.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll basically write a summary of the mission of what I'm planning to do, and sometimes that can be like, I don't know what I want to do here, but it should include X, Y, Z, like that simple. Or it'll be like like I'll write down a few lines of dialogue that I know I want to have in there somewhere, and then it's kind of like disconnected dialogue at that point.
I wouldn't say, Jaro, that this is how only programmers write story. I know a couple of people who've written books, and they do basically the same thing. They outline their process and they kind of jot some things down and be open about it before they start narrowing it down.
Yeah,
if you want to write something really specific, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, like, basically I start with the skeleton, then I throw some meat on it, but like it's very sporadic meat, and then once I have that and I play through it and I feel like at least like the gameplay is nice, then only then will I start actually digging in and properly writing out the full mission from start to end. So I'll go to the first mission, write that out, move to the next one, write that out, and then as I'm going along, I'm seeing, do my notes line up with what I'm actually producing as my like end product, or really it's like a first draft. Like, what does my first draft look like compared to what my sporadic notes were? And sometimes in this process, I will find out like, oh wait, this doesn't make sense. I need to add more here. Or oh wait, this is redundant. I can remove a mission. And I'll then move things around to make everything fit together again. But that's basically how I go. Skeleton, very vague initial outline, as Doom says here. Then from there, build from start to end. And as I'm going along, reassessing, okay, does this still fit? Does this still work? Do I need to add something else later on? Because usually in the process of actually writing out the mission as it's going to be in the end, I'm like, oh, wait, I'm kind of like pointing towards something here that I didn't initially realize I needed. So I'll then add more stuff in to back it all up. And by the end of it, hopefully I have... Yeah, I'm stealing the mic here. By the end of it, hopefully I have something that's good. But then, of course, you play through that, and you do like another like pass through. Is there still anything I feel is missing? Still anything I need to remove? So basically, it's like multiple like loops over the story until ultimately you're happy enough with it to put out in the world.
So two things on my mind. One, I make these comparisons because I'm more of a drawer / like modeler and stuff like that on animator. I think one of the most important things when it comes to creating things is don't fixate on one specific part of whatever you're making, which is what W was just kind of saying. So like in drawing terms, don't draw an amazing eye and then you go to the other one and you're like, oh shit. It's like go back and forth. So when you're writing and you've gotten a decent chunk written out, go back to what you wrote in the beginning and kind of reassess that, like he said, and kind of tie the knots together. Because if you, I mean, you can have like this great thought pattern. Don't break your thought pattern if it's going. But if you write like a whole story, like from start to finish, and then you don't go back to the beginning until the very end, you're gonna look back and be like, oh, well, the end's kind of a little bit weirder than the beginning, or something might not line up. So, another thing is, and this is also important, is keep in mind what you're writing for. Is this just a creative writing that you're just kind of writing on your own, or because I think this is what it's applying to. If it's for Endless Sky, keep in mind what you're keep in mind what all in Endless Sky you're writing about. So, and that's what people are saying here in the comments. We have a great reviewer team. We have people who have written for the game quite a bit. So, getting an understanding of the universe you're writing for and the style that you're writing for is also important.
Mm-hmm. Doom says, I think generally my approach is to start with a very vague initial outline, and he italicizes very, of what I want the story to be, and then I just occasionally think of maybe a specific line or particular plot point or something. Then, after a while of thinking of that, I have enough that I can try to string them together. So, very similar to the approach I was talking about. He then says, when you're writing for Endless Sky, you have the huge advantage that you have writing reviewers who will look at and suggest improvements. I found it really helpful when I'm writing. I can pull across something that isn't perfect, and people who are better at writing than I am will polish it and turn it into
Yeah.
something really good. Yeah, that's the thing too. Like if you're specifically asking about writing tips for the game, we will give you story feedback and writing feedback once it gets to the pull quest phase. If you are trying to get something into the game, that is. If you're doing stuff for a plugin, please don't pull request your plugins for the sake of getting them reviewed.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's plenty
Yeah.
of people you can still ask for feedback on your plugins.
Yeah.
Azure says if you get stuck somewhere, go write something else to get the practice and avoid spending 2 months on a single mission. In parentheses, totally not me. Yeah, there's different ways to get around writer's block, is effectively what you're talking about there. For some people, they have to take a break. For some people, they just have to push through it. For others, if they try and write something else that helps them get back in the groove and they can go back to the first thing and actually finish it. So, yeah, just there's all your writing tips that we can give you, I think. Nicholas says, maybe so. Referring to, he says that there's a mission where you have to go to Green Rock, but you have to pick up a monk first. Although he has already dominated the planet, so maybe we could skip getting the monk if you don't need to bribe your way onto the planet. I said, I think that, at least if it's the correct mission I'm thinking of, you still need the monk for this story. He says, maybe so, I just landed when this chat started. But if the engine already supports it, then not using that is probably a mission bug.
So dominating planets isn't
We've
part of the game. Yeah, we've had it. It's not part of the game's main experience. Dominating planets is meant to be kind of an afterthought. It's something you can't really do until you have a really high combat rating or you have enough ships to be able to fight the planets. It's basically not canon. It's kind of it's partly from the game this one's based on. It's intended to be a quote mini game where you have nothing left to do. You have no more story missions left to do, so you can challenge planets and destroy the fleets and own them and gain some credits for it. Which at that point, from what it sounds like, you said you've had hundreds of ships. It sounds like you're well beyond what the main core of the game.
Yeah.
So.
Are you saying though that the mission text should recognize that you don't actually need the monk to land, even though if you still need him for the conversations? Because if I'm thinking of the right mission, he says something like, "Oh, you're going to need my help in order to land on the planet." We actually could very easily add a branch to that condition and say, like, "Oh, hey, I've already dominated the planet. I don't really need you to help me land." But he could say like, "Oh, you're still going to need me to get around on the planet, though."
Yeah. Well, then that kind of begs the question: should we do that for every case where there's a dominated planet?
Well, how many cases are there like this?
There's a couple, and I know in Free World it's like with the pirate planets, you need to be able to land there. There's some with the Syndicate planets. Yeah. I think there's a Syndicate planet that you have someone talk to the spaceport for you to land on. Doesn't that also happen in the north? I know there's a few cases of it. So.
I mean, there's not a lot though, even if there are a few, and it's not difficult to add a branch. So But
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's difficult.
are you
I'm
saying
just
though? So yes, there are multiple missions where we give you clearance to land, and you have to talk to the planet before you can land, and it overrides the need to bribe the planet. But that's not the same thing as this mission where a guy is saying, "Hey, I will, by you bringing me along, get you onto the planet for free."
Yeah.
I think there's even fewer cases where something like that happens. And the
Yeah.
point being made is, well, it doesn't make sense to offer that because you can get there for free anyway if you've already dominated it.
I see.
So yeah, we can look into that. If you know the exact mission name, you can open an issue for it, and I'll probably milestone it, or open a pull quest for it if you know how to update the conversation.
He asks or says, "I was only wondering if you had the ability in the mission to detect that a planet is detected, and perform the branch. Dominated. Yeah. Oh, to see if it's dominated.
Has tribute
Yeah.
planet name.
That's actually a good time. We can link the. Here, I'll do it.
Yeah, there's a whole
Do you have
page
any-
of
There you
all
go.
the conditions. Oh, that's just the whole fucking wiki.
Conditions.
Link the page.
Player conditions. Hold up.
I got it. Oh, ninja.
No, I got it.
But yeah, look through that page. That's all the things that a mission can check for when it's branching or determining if it can offer or complete or yada yada. Like all the bells and whistles are in there.
Yeah.
And one of those is the tribute of the planet. Although now that I say that, I don't think it's on the list.
Yeah, it might be.
I am absolutely certain it is something you can check for. It's just not on this list. Somebody open a pull request in the new wiki repository.
Someone check the blame.
It should be under modifiable. It's one you can actually change. You can grant and clear tribute for a planet. It's not read only.
There you go. You just joined us yesterday and you already found something we need to have documentation on. You're doing great.
Documentation dev when says it, sure.
Are you volunteering? No? The one time for sure could be a dev, no.
Something else you could do in this specific case, which might actually make more sense than checking tribute, if you check the very bottom of the read-only conditions, there is a landing access condition. You can check if you're able to land on a planet without having to bribe it first.
Mm.
So that might actually make more sense than... Actually, that would make more sense, because let's say you haven't dominated the planet, but you are friendly with pirates. Because then you can still land regardless of whether or not you have the monk. So I think in this case, you want to look at landing access. Although then you might branch depending on whether you're just friendly or whether you've actually demanded tribute from the planet and dominated it. To change how you explain to the monk, like, oh, I actually don't need you to land. But yeah, so the conditions are there for it. It's just that we haven't documented one of them.
All right. So next question is not a question, so I'm skipping that. Ask me anything.
Yeah, just as ask me anything. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's what we're doing right now.
Who are you?
Yeah, who? Who sent this? Fess up.
Yeah. Who are we allowed to ask anything?
Is your soul vast and oceanic?
Ask me nothing, says Rising. Okay.
All right, cool.
Next question. What is the status of High Reveal? At the moment, we have no further public updates on High Reveal. Please refer to whatever I said the last time this question was asked, because it is asked every stream. Or every Campfire chat. I don't know if you want to add anything else. But
I mean, I've already said some things on Steam, so High Reveal, still the same situation where some things with it need to be adjusted, and I've been saying that in the next major update, we do want to kind of turn our eyes back to main game content. So the campaigns, the human content, Wanderers, and then High Reveal is on that list as well. So we can't give like a specific date or anything, but we're coming back to that focus. So at least nobody asked about the Navy campaign this time.
yeah. Rising asks, what's the state of High Legacy? I think that's a
I
solid
think that
question.
can get in. That can probably get in next major update. It still needs a little bit of work.
I feel like the
I
answer should be it
know.
can definitely get in.
Yeah.
We got
Well,
a
man,
lot
I
of
already
time.
went through it, and then Anarchist
Yeah,
jumped
it's
on it and
already
was
been
like, "All
reviewed a
right,
fair amount.
so
It just needs to wait for us to be in a unstable release cycle.
yeah." Well, no, Anarchist actually jumped on it. And there's a lot that needs to be chased with it.
Eh,
Um,
well,
in
that's
their
on Hurl
thoughts.
then, and Hurl's
Yeah.
here, so
Uh, and endpoint next update, next major update.
next question: why have there been no developer team statements since August of 2023? Those were never intended to be super common. It's
Yeah.
the concept is like, hey, whenever we feel like we need to put something out there as a team, that's how we
Mhm.
would do it.
If it's
There
like
just
a
hasn't been anything since then where we're like,
uh,
what do we got to say?
yeah. I guess it's kind of meant to be if there's a large statement we need to make, or if there's something that people are asking our opinions on a lot that we haven't already talked about, or they want kind of a more of a stance on it from all of us, like together, rather than us kind of sitting on the side. So it's it's a situational thing. So
All right. Is it just me, or does the patrol team, person ship, or fleet spawn more often than the other authorships? I don't know. It
I
might.
don't think
It
so.
could
I
also just
think
be more noticeable.
yeah, it might be more noticeable because people might be used to the other ones like coming in and going really fast, and then the authorships, I believe they mine and scan.
It depends
So
on the ship, but yeah.
yeah, something I want to do, and I've been saying this a couple of updates now, which I probably should do for next major update. I want to reduce the spawn rate of person ships by a decent margin. We do have we have a decent amount of more pirate ships. Whoa, uh, person ships than we did like a couple years ago. And something I kind of call back to, and is the EV series where they're meant to be like a kind of a semi-rare. Oh, hey, look, it's that guy who did this for the game or something like that. So I want to kind of cut those down a decent amount from the spawn, especially because they could jump scare you sometimes when they're mining. And that's another thing.
Yeah.
Some people there's like a recent comment on Steam saying, oh, these ships are mining all my shit, man. Can they not do that? And it's just kind of like, can they not mine? Can they not scan me and get me in trouble? So I think just kind of knocking down the spawn rate, like even by half,
Hmm.
is something I want to do. So
And thankfully, we can do that with game rules very easily because
yes.
the spawn rate of person ships and the chance for no person ship to spawn, even if a spawn attempt does occur, those are both game rules now. So we can just up the values.
Hmm.
I did have a lot of trouble with person ships when I was trying to capture the new pirates from the previous update, so
Yeah.
you should probably look at that.
Yeah.
I will say I've had person ships save me sometimes though, because some of them are hostile to
Yeah.
pirates. I'll be in the middle of a mission that has me fighting pirates, and then I'm struggling, and all of a sudden, like, pointed stick comes in out of nowhere and just wipes the floor with everybody, and then leaves. I'm like, all right, thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Up next, please reaffirm that all future campaign difficulties will be balanced around the player flying a single ship, as per the established norm. Well, if it's the established norm, do we really need to reaffirm it? This means that all future discussions of what if the player flies 300 heavy warships are relevant. I mean, in a sense, yes.
Um,
Was this basically like
so
somebody saying, I want to say something to the crowd, but like asking it in the form of a question? Please let everyone know that I think this, okay?
um,
I mean, any story I work on is definitely going to be balanced around that because that's what I'm testing it with.
well, yeah, the general idea, and I think this is, quote me if I'm wrong, or correct me if I'm wrong, is MZ like, from the very beginning kind of thought of the what's this say now? The future campaign difficulty. Okay, well, most of the game essentially is based around a single ship, or and I've seen MZ say this, a small fleet of ships. But a small fleet is not 300 ships.
Yeah.
It'd be like 3 or 4 ships, and that's kind of around the margin.
Yeah, I think
And
like 5 ships max, not counting fighters and drones, is what I would consider small.
Yeah, 5 or 6. I say 6 just because EV Nova, but or EV series, but it's supposed to be doable in a single ship. That's not to say it won't be easy to do in a single ship. And having a few ships is to kind of like make that a little bit easier.
Yeah.
I know I remember Warp Core saying like a kind of way to ease the difficulty of the game is to get a few more ships in your fleet. If we're talking 20, 50, 100, 500 fleet ships, at that point the game's not balanced around that. And we don't want to take this comes up a lot. We don't want to take away the ability to have that either. So it's just kind of pace yourself. Don't calm down. Don't capture everything. If you want to, go ahead.
Yeah. Play your way. All right. But this is the intended way. One ship. If you're doing it any other way,
Yeah.
that's on you.
If you want us to reaffirm that we're doing solo / a few ships, yep, sure. That is actually what we're doing, and perhaps some missions still need to be looked at in that regard. And I've said this quite a bit too. We do need to review everything, especially after that mass balance change. So we can always revisit in case this isn't the case.
Yeah, that's the point. We're stating the intent. If there's a mission that you feel like is impossible with a single ship,
Tell us.
yeah, well, part of it could be skill issue, but
yeah, it
but
really
just
depends.
because there are missions that are more difficult than others while you're in a single ship, that doesn't mean that the intent is any different.
And we do acknowledge that some right now could be adjusted.
Yeah. All right. Up next, could we have some sort of community feedback form about what people think of the client state of the game? It should be able to reach a lot of the community, so perhaps we could mention it in the release notes or a Steam announcement. If by client state of the game you just mean like the general state of the game that people are playing, we already do that every single update. I have just linked the form for the latest update. It is linked at the bottom of every announcement that we do when we do an update. Hey, here's the feedback box for the update.
We do feedback every update.
And we will ask specific questions as well, like, hey, we changed XYZ this update. What do you think about that change?
And we do it. There's also an option that says, "Do you have any other comments on anything else?"
Yeah, and there's also a free form or free fill box, which is type whatever you want, and we can look through it. And I will note we've only had 3 responses so far in the past week. So to this one.
Yeah.
And I guess now that we're looking at this, Ty asked you earlier, like, should we look at the responses? I guess we can now. The first question, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you like the changes to mass and engine stats? And the current results, the 3 results, are positive. One person said 7 out of 10, one person said 8 out of 10, and the other person said 10 out of 10. So of those 3 people, they're liking it.
Do you want to elaborate on your previous answer? No.
Yeah, one person just said no, they don't want to elaborate. Another person said, this update can give smaller ships a chance to participate in a fight rather than using 10 capital ships in your fleet. I've noticed that some of the already slow ships become more slow, in parentheses, the Ogden, and are sad.
The really only ones that got hit hard, I would say, like, sad-wise, are the Ogden, and then maybe the Corse Manus, but you can't fly that anyway.
Yeah, I think the ships that got hit really hard are the ships that should have been hit really hard to begin with. Like, they are the biggest, most massive ships in the game. They should be super slow.
Yeah. And I get that it's supposed to be kind of fun, but a majority of it is the chorus ships, which now they actually feel like not city, but ships that they live in that are big, meaty, slow, kind of, instead of their world ships being able to turn on a dime. But I've also seen some people throughout the Discord saying that they want to try runs on like some of the faster ships now. So like Sea Scorpions or something like that, like from the high. And I've seen, I know Doom's been playing around with the Interceptors too. So far, it's been, I believe, a positive. And the next part here, the third answer to this question, which is also kind of relevant, of course, is could still do with larger ships turning slower, specifically, and turrets. So this did hit their turning as well, but let me read the rest of this first. Some clear documentation being published somewhere. how to rework ships for the change would be appreciated, as when reading the pull request, I don't really understand the changes the user describes having made. How does one divide the heat dissipation inversely and proportionally by the mass increase? That's a Doom question.
Yeah, I would just post on the pull request and be like, hey, can you explain?
Yeah.
And
Well, Doom was
if
saying
you don't
he
want to
could
find the
put.
pull request, just talk to Doom.
Yeah, he said he
Yeah,
could put.
I did put that in the pull request after seeing that
Yeah.
answer, so it's in the comments. I can put it in development resources as well if you want it.
Go for it.
Do it.
Yeah, right.
Just say like something like, there was a recent change with mass, and here's blah 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 blah. blah.
All right.
But yeah.
Next questions are on fighters. In this update, we made disabled fighters immune to any stray shots that aren't targeting them, increasing their survivability. How effective would you say this change is? And the same response as the first one, 7, 8, and 10. But the next question is, how much do you like using carriers and fighters in general after this change? The answers are 1, 7, and 8. So somebody just still doesn't
Okay.
like using fighters.
Yeah.
And that's something I'll note. We've kind of talked about this before, where some people don't like using fighters. Some people don't like using
Missiles or-
secondary weapons because they have to
Yeah,
rearm
secondary
them
weapons.
or repurchase them. We're not trying to make it so that missiles and fighters are something that everyone wants to use. I can completely understand some people being like, I just don't want to deal with that extra hassle,
Mhm.
even if it does end up being more effective in some way. The extra hassle is the cost for it being more effective. Some
Yeah, it's
people
not that.
will want to deal with that, and others won't. We're not trying to, again, it should be an option, is the point we're
Mhm.
trying to do. You shouldn't be handicapping yourself by using fighters or using secondary weapons, which I feel like at this point we've really gotten to that point. For years, fighters, you've kind of, in some cases, were handicapping yourself in the long run by trying to use them. They would help
Mhm.
immediately short term, and then they all die, and it's like, all right, well now I have to go spend a bunch of money rearming them, but at this point it's not as
Mhm.
painful to use them.
And there's been talk going around about maybe bumping up fighter numbers on carriers too, on some, but that still kind of leaves the whole replacing them. It's not that they're not effective. So torpedo, like you fighting the campaign, I would imagine that you get bullied by the fighters and the torpedoes and the missiles and all the secondary weapons. It's mostly the ammunition part of it. So
Somebody else just responded to the survey. One more response. They added a
One more
7 to
10?
the
Dang.
question of how much they like the mass changes. The response and elaborating was, I guess it feels cool to fly a small ship, SMOL. Though Korth world ships make me sad, frowny face.
Well, yeah, the Korth world ships were too fast for their own good. That kind of had to happen.
Yeah.
They
They
were flying
said
around
that,
almost interceptor speed.
yeah, it was something. They said that the change to fighters not being disabled or being immune when disabled is a 8 out of 10, and that they are a 10 out.
Fighters are mainly kind of. I didn't literally look at them at first like this, but they're kind of this secondary ship. We have secondary weapons, and this is a secondary ship. I don't know. However you want to put it.
Yeah, there was talk when the idea was first brought up of like, would we add this mechanic to any other ships? And I think that we said maybe interceptors could receive the change, but I don't think that once you get to light warships that we would want to make this change, because there are some pretty powerful light warships that you can make use of, and you probably should end up losing those. Although if we're making the change to interceptors, then you might as well say, okay, what about like small light freighters and small transport ships? And at that point, we're basically just saying, well, then, or do we just want to do we just want to make it easier when you're flying one of the starter ships to not get blown up? Which, I mean, maybe we do that, but
We did.
Huh?
Heavy rockets won't blow you up as much in this update.
Oh,
as they
yeah,
did
yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah. That was the other thing we didn't mention. We made some changes to the balance of missiles in human space, so they should not suck as much
That's on
to
here.
fire.
We're getting to that.
Yeah. But and then they shouldn't suck as much to get hit by, especially the heavy rocket. Although my one concern with doing this for stuff that isn't fighters and drones is that, as Saw kind of mentioned, fighters and drones are distinct from other ships in that they don't have hyperdrives. They can't jump between systems on their own, at least not without super heavy refitting, which is kind of pointless to do. They're designed to be carried by bigger ships. Interceptors, small transports, small freighters, that is not the case. So if we made
Yeah.
it so that those smaller ships that aren't carried also had this mechanic, then I feel like people would get used to that mechanic in the smaller ships and then start asking, well, why isn't this like why when I upgraded to a light warship is this not the case anymore?
Well, I think it's coming more so from people with large fleets, because
That too.
fighters are dying a lot because of big fleet battles. But if we're trying to add them to interceptors and then light warships and so on and so on, I think at that point it's not about the flagship and it's about people having a big fleet of like sparrows or something, and they're all dying. And it just kind of goes back to it's not about fleets, and but it's not about fleets. So like if you have like 20 sparrows and they're dying, they're dying. But fighters, as we're saying, they're kind of a separate entity from ships that you would normally be flying. So it does make sense that or it does make sense to us that we can make them easier to work with, because they kind of they're more of like an ammunition than they are another ship in your fleet. And then, yeah, fleets aren't supposed to be massive, so.
Mhm.
I think that's kind of where this is kind of talking about, but I could be wrong. Because once you're disabled as your main ship, I mean, you're probably either going to wait 10 minutes for someone to repair you, or you're going to reload your save. So
Yeah. All right. There's more responses coming in, so I'm not gonna like follow up on every single one that
yeah.
gets posted live. But
Well, thank you for the responses. Like,
yep,
keep
yep.
them coming.
Somebody says answering to elaborate on their like or dislike of carriers and fighters. This person says I liked using carriers before, but this makes them so much more fun, especially with bulky fighters like the Korth ones. Yeah, because those bulky ones are also slower and therefore were more likely to get blasted, but also are a lot more powerful when
Like,
you are using them.
also, they have a bit more of a health bar to get disabled and not blown up in one shot.
Mhm.
um,
Up next, we had a few. How many questions did you guys add to this?
I don't know who did it. I thought you did it.
No,
We
I
were all
added.
talking
I
about
added
it.
the first two questions, and that was it.
Oh,
Yeah, if you don't know, like I guess Ty, did you say you didn't have edit access? I got to
think
make sure
Hector
all the
did it.
devs
He's
have edit
typing.
access, but somebody added a bunch of questions,
Wait, no, he didn't.
and it wasn't
Okay.
me.
Well, whoever did it, thank you.
It's probably Warp.
Warper Anarchist.
So this question is back in 0.10.0, human missiles were given lower drag and acceleration, making their movement more slippery. In this update, we've reverted those changes. Steam is getting in the way because I accidentally opened it. In this update, we reverted those changes, returning missiles to their previous behavior. How do you feel about using missiles in the current update? The possible answers were they feel better, they feel worse, they don't feel better or worse, so no change, or I don't use missiles. 2 people said they don't use missiles. 2 people said they feel better. 1 person said they feel worse. Then the question was, how do you feel about dodging missiles in this update? The answers were dodging is better, dodging is worse, or there is no change. 3 people said there's no change. 1 person says it feels better. Then asked to elaborate on the previous change. 1 person gave us multiple paragraphs. 1 person said, I don't dodge missiles, I eat them for lunch, in parentheses, anti-missile for the win. 1 person said, fix the firelight balance. Okay, the person who gave... I'm just going to skim over the paragraphs that somebody sent.
Yeah.
It looks weird and bad in AI versus AI fights to have all the leftover derelicts be almost exclusively the smallest, most fragile ships. This is... I think you elaborated on the wrong question. This is for fighters. But this box is about missiles. So they're just saying they think it's weird to have leftover small ships. This doesn't feel like it makes any physical sense. It makes them look like they have some kind of special emergency shielding technology. The sort of thing that the first question everyone in the universe would be like, why not install this on bigger ships? LOL. Here's the thing, though. Maybe some people are going to hate me for this. I don't care. Like, it's a gameplay concern. I don't think that every piece of gameplay needs an in-universe explanation. And this is one of those things that was only added for gameplay concerns. It sucks to use fighters. Okay, how do we make it easier to not... How do we make it less sucky to use fighters? How about you make it harder for them to be lost? Well, how do you make it harder for them to be lost? Make them not blow up as often. Well, how do we do that without making it so that they last longer in combat, therefore making them more powerful than they already are? Well, just make it so that once they're out of combat, they don't just blow up immediately. So, That's
and
kind of how we
it's
came
not
to that
like-
decision. It wasn't from a sense of how do we explain this mechanic in the system. It was entirely, well, how do we make fighters not suck? Oh, here's a way to do it. Let's see if this
Yeah.
works.
It's the same way with credits. Credits are universal because it's really easy to work with for gameplay and it doesn't make it complicated. Versus like there being like a whole bunch of alien factions with different credits, and then you start getting into currency exchange, which we want to make the gameplay in cases like these a bit easier to work with, not make sense. if that makes sense.
Nicholas says fighters should auto retreat to the mothership and get fully repaired, then redeploy, and should be able to survive a few hits and escape. That's already what they do. If a fighter has taken, I think, 25% of its health in damage, it will retreat. It used to be a lower threshold, but we realized that by the time they start retreating, they are so low on health that the like 1 or 2 more hits is enough to take them out. So we raise the threshold. So now if they take like I said, I think it's 25% of their HP worth of damage, they will immediately try and turn and retreat, and that gives them a lot of a bigger buffer to take a few stray hits before they get back to the carrier. And then they will only redeploy if they've reached, I think, 80%, or they might wait a few seconds. I don't know if they get to full health, but when they redeploy, but they do wait until they repair up to redeploy. Peter says, my problem with fighters is that I usually equip them with unique weapons, or at least optimized loadouts, like flamethrowers or inhibitors and fast engines. Replacing such fighters is a lot more work than just buying regular fighters back. Yeah, and that's kind of what we were getting at. The act of replacing fighters is difficult, so let's make it so you lose them a lot less often to begin with.
Yeah. Well, and another thing is if the concern is that they should auto retreat and get fully repaired and redeploy, which they already do. At some point, you have to kind of look at that. They do take hits very. They don't take hits very well. So if like a torpedo or a large cannon shot or something hits a fighter and it's half down, then it's already running away. The only real way to work around that is to give them more health or more survivability, and then that starts to kind of run into concerns of
Yeah.
you can get swarmed by fighters and you can't do anything about it because even focusing on one won't kill it. And again, it's kind of this whole like cycle again, back to what we were saying earlier, where fighters aren't bad. They're good, especially in early and especially in medium-sized fights. It's when you get into fleet battles is when it becomes a concern, and that starts to get into a gray line. So, and especially a good example, and Warp brings up this one a lot, is the Giftbringer fight. When you fight that, if you're flying into one ship or the few ships that the game's intended to be based around, those fighters can get pretty crazy on you. And in fights like that, if fighters survive better, or if they have higher health, or say people are saying give them dodge chance, then it makes it a lot more difficult to work with in kind of these kind of mid-balanced sized missions.
So there were 2 more
Yeah.
paragraphs to this response, but it basically boils down to, can this be configurable? And the answer is yeah, I'm going to work on that. I'll make it so it's a game role you can toggle.
Well, we have it enabled or disabled by default.
Still enabled, but just make it a game role.
Yeah.
I'm not saying get rid of it. I just like glazed the mechanic for like
Oh no
past
no.
10, like 20 minutes.
And speaking of toggleables, did you have anything else left about that one before we move on?
I mean, there's more questions in the survey.
That's what I was going. I was going to the next one, which is a toggleable.
Go for it.
All right. Next one, which is what I was talking about earlier, is camera acceleration is a new feature of this update, making the camera lag behind or ahead of your ship while accelerating. It is currently enabled by default. What setting are you using for it? And 2 people said they're using the reverse setting for it. And 3 people said they have it on. And nobody said they have it off yet, which is interesting. But even more interesting is what should the default setting be for this for camera acceleration? And one person said reversed. I'm assuming that's one of the people who use it in reverse. 2 people said on, and 2 people said off. So nobody said they have it off, but 2 people said it should be off by default, which is interesting. Do you want to elaborate on your answers above? So first response says, well, okay, one says no, so we're not doing that. It gives a sense of speed for the player. Ella's suggestion, upon doing hyperdrive, I kind of like the idea of the ship going off screen due to how fast it's traveling. Another one I have is Exaggerated setting for camera acceleration, meaning it would give the illusion of the ship going faster. So I guess more of what it's already doing. So someone's asking to do it with the hyperdrive as well, where the ship goes off the screen. I think you probably shouldn't do that because an important part of gameplay is, again, having the camera focus on your ship. And if you're jumping into a system and there's like a battle going on, you're going to want that on your ship. But if you're saying it should fly off the screen and then when you hit the other system, it goes back onto your ship, that also might be a bit jarring. So I guess it would depend on how many people would actually want that. Because right now it kind of seems like to me at least, it seems pretty specific. So that's that. Do you have any thoughts on that reply?
I'm mainly looking at the third one.
Okay, so I'll just second one real quick. As all graphic features, camera acceleration should be off by default. Okay, and the third one, and this is what I was talking about, and I agree with this, to be honest. The player's ship always being exactly, those are caps, in the center of the screen is an important
Didn't mean to do
reference point while playing for judging distances and such. It does feel nice to fly around with the camera acceleration, so it's a welcome feature, but it's functionally detrimental to the gameplay, which is why it should be off by default. And I agree with that. When we start playing with the camera being not on the main ship, which is what you're flying, then it can be a little bit, as I said, jarring or not as focused as it should be, or you're focused on it as well as you should be. So, and then some guy says camera still feels good. I just sense the speed of the game me like.
Me like.
Unga
Yeah.
So.
All right, then.
I'd
last question here, unless you want to elaborate more on that.
I was just gonna say, personally, I would vouch for it being disabled but off by default, but I don't know what you or others are thinking about that yet.
I want to swap it off. Also, landing zoom.
Yeah, isn't that? I thought that was off by default.
I think it's on by default. Last I checked.
Oh, well, I probably turned it off once and never touched it again.
Yeah, WeirdNut says, I feel like the camera acceleration is backwards. You should be able to have a wider field of view in the direction of your ship is traveling, so you know what you're flying into. Well, that's what the reverse setting is for.
Yeah, but maybe the reverse should be the not reverse.
The normal, yeah. I did think of that, but I was like, yeah, that's kind of splitting hairs. You have the two settings. Just use whatever you feel is better. I'm sure reverse is more realistic.
Oh, now I have to remove it. All right, go ahead with the last question.
The last question is just the feedback, like the general feedback box. Do you have any general feedback about this update or the game in general? First person said, this update really changes the Endless Sky meta, in my opinion. Like how we usually use 20 capital ships and leave the rest collecting dust. Speak for yourself, but I think it does improve things. Cool stuff, keep going, says the second person. Third person says, oh yeah, but I'm too lazy to type, so rep system is OP. Please allow the repair of hostile disabled ships.
No, that is intentional for the Gegno, and I know you're talking to me.
I don't know how that would work though. Like you repair a disabled ship.
Ships. Oh, okay. So this is the option talking about whether or not you board a ship to loot it or you board it to repair it if it's hostile. I remember you were saying this, Derpy. Like
no, it would be if you're friendly.
Okay.
If you're friendly to a ship and you board it, you would have the choice to either repair it, give it fuel, or to board it. For hostile ships, how would repairing a hostile disabled ship work? Would it not just immediately try and start firing at you? And if you have auto fire on, your guns would immediately start firing back at it?
That sounds very specific.
Well, we have the bribe option. So you might want to have the bribes in the other direction as well.
Yeah, you can bribe it and then repair
Now
it?
they can bribe you.
Yeah.
Ask for a bribe and then repair them.
Potentially.
If we do that, I would be careful in doing it because it's kind of ironic. This says rep system OP. If you're making hostile ships being able to repair it, and then you get rep from that.
Yeah.
Be careful with that.
I think the main thing that I am a bit worried about is that we don't have the UIs for all those things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that I think we have very good UI designers. We have some other very good developers. But we need to find a way to get that combined, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we kind of, whenever we do make tweaks to the UI, it's always like minor stuff. It's like, oh, move a button here or there, but we never like. I think the main thing is like getting better graphics for, or not better, but newer graphics for some of the buttons we want to add. Because there's been talk of
It's
like,
a very
yeah, changing the stuff you can do when you're boarding, but the existing boarding panel is kind of limited in what we can add to it without it being overloaded.
rather specific way to do it
Yeah.
for UI elements.
I think we should also allow then to have UI improvements being merged ahead of the code that goes with it. Then you can have UI designers prepare the nice UI, and then you can have somebody write the code for it in a later commit.
Well, that's kind of like something we did before, where some people would request artwork for ships that don't exist in the game yet. We did merge it, although the concern with that is we have to be kind of certain that that's what we want to do. Because sometimes, like, so for some of the images sitting in the game right now, there's some pirate variants that are sitting. I'm not sure if we're going to use all of them. I know we do want to use them, but it comes down to we have to be absolutely certain if we ever do decide to merge things before actually implementing them that we want them there. Which,
Yeah.
That's true. But the other way around is also tricky. First write the code for the feature and then have the UI
Yeah,
changed. That
yeah,
would
that's
be,
also true.
well, interesting.
Yeah. So I
Clearly,
guess
we just need to
maybe
start with programmer art. we'll have like placeholder programmer art. Be like, it'll look something like this.
I mean that's how the game was.
You can do
Yeah.
that, no worries.
Yeah. I'm just kind of trying to envision like what would it actually look like to have an updated UI panel for something, but like most of it be unfunctional.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess
Well, what I would expect is that the old panel and the new panel would just coexist. So you
okay,
keep
okay.
using the panel as is. You merge the new panel, and at some point in time you just flip the switch
Okay,
to
that
the
makes
new
sense. That
panel.
makes sense.
Okay.
So it's kind of like what Sog was saying of we add a sprite for a ship to the game, but just don't have the data for it and don't
Yeah.
implement it anywhere. I mean,
Well,
that's
the
how
reason I
the
was saying to
Strider
be
was for forever.
careful. Yeah, the reason I was saying is to be careful is it depends because like then it with UI it makes more sense, but if we're talking about like especially like content or like ships and outfits and all that stuff, I guess that's what I meant more so is be sure we want to do it or what we're putting in is um in a good spot to be adapted from rather than throw it in and then make guesses on it later, which we've done before, but yeah. But for UI, perhaps.
I think we can move on then. Back to the submitted questions. Somebody asks, how do GitHub milestones work? Well, we have a milestone is just a collection of issues or pull requests, really. And we're saying, like, hey, we want these done by some date. I mean, some of the milestones aren't even dated. Yeah, Ty posted the milestones page on GitHub. So you see right now that we have a 0.10.8 milestone, and this is saying, hey, here's everything we want done for the 0.10.8 update, which is currently marked as due for the 22nd of this month. And then 0.10.9 is going to be the next big update after that. There's a bunch of stuff already put in there that we want to get to, due date being September 28th. But then we have other stuff where it's like, hey, here's the 10.x stuff. We want it at some point before 1.0, but we think it's easy enough to get to that it's not going to have to wait until 1.0. So the 1.0 stuff is a separate milestone. And combat test, that's been there for a while. We can probably...
Yeah, we don't really use that.
Yeah, combat test was more of a, hey, we had a bunch of issues at the time that were all very balance focused. And the idea was maybe we make a whole separate branch to test some of these ideas. That never really panned out, and we've just kind of been slowly actually just straight up adding some of these to the main game. Like, I think some of these at this point can even probably be addressed. Like, the one of these issues is Sparrow start with the new missile changes from Joseph D. And I think he's just, if I recall this one correctly, he's saying that it's difficult to do one of the missions because of the missiles that are used against you. I mean, we just said though that like, hey, we messed with missile balance, so maybe this
Yeah,
could
we
be
reverted
readdressed
it.
or looked at more closely and potentially closed.
Yeah. Well, and then another note with milestones. Maybe part of the question is how do we go about deciding what gets a milestone and what doesn't? Um, Generally, milestones are. It's pretty simple. It's something we want to get into that update or get done before that time. And sometimes we might overwhelm ourselves a little bit. I know with this update, we looked at the milestone and there was a whole bunch of them, and
Yeah, there's always.
um,
It's not a guarantee if something is milestone that it will be
yeah,
merged for that
it
update because we usually get to the end. It's like, oh, there's still 20 things left.
yeah
Let's see what we can wrap up in 2 weeks and what we have to kick to the next one.
yeah, but there is a like visual difference between like a regular PR and something or an issue and something gets milestone. It means it's something we're more likely to have our eyes on.
Yeah,
In
it's
more often than not, it's usually either a bug or something that needs to be fixed. I guess that's the same thing, or like a very difficult mission or something like that. So it's more of like a I wouldn't say immediate priority, but it would be higher on the radar than other things
hmm
and more kind of like set to be complete by that date. And
yeah,
if they ever lose the milestone, it's not because we don't want to do it anymore. It's because there's either more important things or it's quite a bit of effort for that update. So maybe it gets tied down to the next update, or maybe if it gets really removed completely, maybe it means there's some other things that are going on in the works that would affect it. We wouldn't know when those would be done or something like that.
all right. Next
All
question.
right.
What parts of Endless Sky's development process do you like? What parts would you like to see changed? I'll let you guys start.
Yeah.
Anything you want to say that you like? Anything you want to say that you don't like?
Um. Since I started being a dev here, I guess, and this is such a cop-out answer, I know. I like that our updates have become closer together, and we're chugging a bit more along with it and trying to, uh, how do I put this? Like work on things a bit more. I don't want to say quickly, but trying to press them a bit faster and not like sit on them for too long. And I know like the older you go, the more that might happen, but. And that kind of ties into what I'd like to see change. I like to see us continuing to do that. um, I guess this is kind of more of like a not open-ended question. Doom says, "I like the part where other people do all the difficult work for me." I think we all like that. um, I would like for the development process to change for us not to sit on decisions for too long for content or merges or closes or what have you. But that's coming from me specifically. So if you guys want to go ahead.
Ryzen says, hey, me
I
too.
think,
Well,
yeah, I once heard Tehouse say, Tehau, how do I pronounce his name? I only wrote it before.
Tehouch. That's how I say
Tehouch,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
I once saw him write, hey, people are always working on those cool features that look really nice, and they don't work on the lower level engine changes that make all those new possibilities, make them come true.
mhm.
The cool thing is I now also know what he means. I see that I make changes that are really cool and I get hundreds of review comments. Most of them, hey, this is a cool feature, I like it. And if I make a change that is really in the engine, really enabling a lot of cool features in the future, then usually the response is, well, I don't know why we need it. That's
Yeah.
something which is interesting to see.
I think there it's just a matter of, like, we can say, oh, if we do this, if we do XYZ, it'll make ABC possible in the future. But it's kind of hard to envision that future state if what you're adding isn't immediately going to make things different or better.
Mhm.
That's like a bias that we kind of have to get over in a few cases, though. That we do
Yeah.
need to recognize, like, oh, hey, this is something that even if in the immediate it's not going to help us out a lot, it will help us out a lot in the future. I think one of the things that I point to that really helped us out with that is your change to how conditions work. Like in the immediate, it really made no difference before or after. But as time has gone on and we've been able to add more auto conditions, it's been an amazing change. Like there's certain things you just could not do right now that without it, and it's like I don't know what we would do if we hadn't had that at some point.
I was considering also an update on that one to have something like condition listeners.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of having all those things that have conditions continue monitor, to have it work partially the other way around, that certain aspects of the game can just listen for condition if it's going to change or not. That's not really functionality, it's just a performance thingy. It would make the performance of the game probably a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
Doom, did you want to add one?
Tab says, I think the new attribute system thing had a pretty good reception, except it's broken on Clang and I don't know how to fix it. The Weird Net says, I've been trying to sneak Unicode support in for a while now. Lots of engine changes, yeah. Just trying to get it in one commit at a time, he says. Yeah, I know there was a Unicode support pull request from forever ago now, but it was just so big that no one ever got to it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It was because not enough people at the time were knowledgeable enough to actually tackle something of that size. Nicholas says, I want to move all the English out of the code so that the game can be translated. Yeah, that's something else we also need to do eventually, is make it so that any sort of UI text is in some way configurable without needing to recompile the game. Doom says, I mean, yeah, my previous comment was worded a little unseriously, but I do generally really appreciate being able to work with people with different sets of skills to complete big tasks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Me definitely as well. I don't know. I will say the second thing about code because I know a little bit about code, but I do appreciate those who are able to dive into it and make or just make things happen.
Yeah. Anything you guys don't like? Anything else? I guess
I
Peter
already
kind of said
kinda-
something that he think needs improved.
Yeah, I already kind of said that too, and it kind of ties in with what Peter said is where we kind of if we're looking at
Yeah.
what we're adding to the game, there's like
Lots
on
of
one
things lingering.
side maybe deciding something might not work, and then later on it's like, oh, that would have helped us, and then on the reverse, saying something that helped us, and then then eventually it's not used.
Yeah.
So.
I think that I mean, I kind of already mentioned the stuff that's fun. I think Doom's got it right working with other people, you know. I can come up with an idea, but if it's a bad idea, I want somebody to tell me. Or if it could be better, I want somebody to tell me as well. Like the whole marking mechanic, the way that started is not the way it ended. And there's plenty of other stuff that I've done where my first idea is not the best idea, but it's only through working with people that we end up getting something that's actually pretty good.
Or like the ability idea, where none of us think that's a good name.
I'm gonna hold strong on that.
We're all gonna hold strong against it. Yeah, for all those people who think we
I'll
do
fight
everything Derpy says.
All we
That's
need is a
right.
name? Question mark, says Azure. For what?
Yeah, this is something that doesn't exist right now. We can't talk about it.
Abilities. I mean, I'm gonna do the mechanic. What we call it is almost inconsequential, but I'm gonna call it abilities.
Yeah, none of us want him to call it that.
What else do you call something that you activate? Special power, says Azure. That sounds stupid.
Buttons.
Space magic. I said like you have abilities in like World of Warcraft or like I don't know. What's the other one that was
Well,
out?
someone
That was
said
big
utility,
recently?
and it's like, oh, but it's a ship name.
It's like you have abilities that you activate, or some abilities are passive. You have active and passive abilities. That's the terminology I was going to use. And the
know, what do you
complaint was, well, when I think ability, I think of a person doing a thing, not a ship doing a thing.
Actives?
Yeah, but that's such a
Active or
generic term.
passive?
Toggleable, like, but then we're getting
The
too
ability is
generic.
not a generic term? Hello.
Capability? No, because ability is already a term that's used in video games to refer to these exact types of things. So I don't know what the issue with the name is. If it's already what is used, status effects, you apply status effects though, and we already have things that we could call status effects. A feature? What?
Endless Sky, can we add a feature as a feature?
We should redo damage over time, says Azure. I've thought of that. Doom said, in terms of change to development, I guess I'd like to see big story additions getting faster. That'd be nice. A lot of people have written story things that I enjoy playing, though, or playing through, and I'd like to see more of it get in the game. Agreed.
Yeah, I that's what I was saying. Is I think we need to make decisions on bigger stories and kind of work them out better
Doom
than
says
we
we should
normally
call
do.
them spells.
Spells? Okay, no, that's pushing it too far.
Okay, but that's too specific now to
Yeah.
RPGs, to fantasy RPGs. Potions of
Yeah,
Scissor.
let me heal my ship real quick.
Yeah, let me down a healing potion.
The potion of burn enemy ship to death.
Potion. Yeah, rename the cloak to a potion of invisibility. Potion of nuke.
I'm surprised I sure didn't say that.
I will
Okay.
note we're closing in on 2 hours already, and I do actually have something to get to after this. I have a dinner to get to, so we might rapid fire these last few questions. Sorry if you have something that you kind of wanted us to spend a lot of time on, but yeah, I'm gonna move on.
Okay.
What's your favorite species / faction?
Don't say your own.
The High.
Coalition.
All right.
That's kind of hard for me.
Okay, we'll skip you.
I'd say either Wanderers or Korg.
All right. Wanderers is good too.
Yeah.
Azure says the Avgi, of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, if it's like Gegno or Relay, then it's like, oh, why are you saying that? Which isn't true. But
All right.
next one.
How do you feel about the opinions given in Zichaz's discussion post 10.061? I'll post it just for people who haven't seen it yet. I don't think.
Therefore, I'm not.
How do you feel about the opinions? I haven't given it too much thought, admittedly.
I've read it a little bit, and I think the purpose of the discussion and what the opinions are kind of somewhat separate things. Because I would agree with a majority of these opinions, and I'd also say that a lot of them are happening right now. But I feel like some people are saying they're not, and that's what the kind of the split says.
Yeah, there's a massive issue with people's conception of the development of the game and what the development is actually like.
Yeah.
Which, like, not calling out
happens.
Dane here, but he says, just like skimming through his comment, it can be hard to contribute. There's lots of corners of Endless Sky that are, quote, claimed or, quote, off limits, and wandering into them will get you burnt. Despite the lore being written to be open-ended and quite mutable, there's also a strong resistance against altering it in even small ways. There's a conservative momentum that can be challenging to impossible to push back against. There's also this also extends to something aggressively stylistic, to sometimes aggressively stylistic expectations, which has the end result of being stifling.
And
I just disagree, to be honest.
I understand that as like a perspective. So like we can't sit here and say, "Oh, but that's not true. What you're seeing is not true," because everyone obviously has a perception how development is going or how contribution is going. So what am I trying to think of here? When you say that it's not malleable and it feels very stifling. It's kind of hard to talk about this as devs, right? Because it's going to sound kind of biased. But a lot of content through the years has been adjusted to kind of fit into the game, and some things change and some things don't, right? And it. Can I get a second call? Can I get a phone call?
I'm
I'm
gonna
tr- I'm
say
tr-
if you say that corners of the game feel claimed or off limits, can you be specific? You say lots of corners.
Yeah.
I feel like whenever some like these topics come up, people are like, oh, they speak in generalities. Like,
Yeah.
oh, there's things are this way, things are that way. It's like, okay, what's the specific thing that you have issue with though? Because I can't answer to a generality.
So
I
I'll
can
give
answer
one
to a
as an
specific.
example, though. I'll give one as an example. I'll grab a specific so we can have an example here. I think one of the more common ones is why can't there be systems in blank area of the map? So I'll say this because this is what you're most familiar with, Derpy. Why can't there be systems around the deep space?
Are you asking for an answer?
Yeah.
The answer I would give is that the way that the deep has been built up is they are an isolationist group, and they were put there. Spoiler alert: they were put there by the Pug to act as a last bastion of humanity if anything else went awry, wherever else humans are.
Mhm.
So part of the theming of that is that they are isolated.
Mhm.
There's only one way in and out of the deep, one system at the very end of deep space that you can go in and out of. And there are I think there's like one other system you can jump into with a jump drive from the Paradise Worlds. Otherwise, there's no way in or out of deep space other than through that very narrow opening at the bottom. If we were to then add systems all around the deep that you could jump in and out of, well, then that kind of ruins the sense of isolation of that region. And it's not as if the Pug don't know what jump drives are. So the Pug would have this sense of it doesn't matter if the hyper lanes are isolated. It also matters if it's isolated in terms of jump drive range, that is.
And my reason for bringing the deep up, oh geez, that's a big map. It's just in chat. Someone put all the plugins together. The reason why I bring that up and I set up an example like that is I kind of want to point it out that it's not as simple as this is just off limits or you're not allowed to go here and you're not allowed to do anything with it. If there's something that comes across like that in the game, there's probably a reason for it. There might be a lore reason, there might be a gameplay reason. Same thing with like writing and style of writing or even model. There's always a reason of why things are, and I'll say this: you're entirely allowed to disagree with the reasoning or agree with the reasoning, and at the end of the day, we're kind of developing the game based on how we envision the game goes, right? And how things are put together, what makes sense, what doesn't to us. So it's not that certain parts of the game are just off limits, you're not allowed to do it. It's that there's reasons why something might not make sense with that concept or why something would make sense with that concept. So and I do understand the concern of how that could come across as stifling, but I think it would be a good idea to kind of look at it maybe not as stifling, but as there's kind of a precedent set there. And we would usually work around that kind of basis of the game. And I think people sometimes get confused with the game being open source and open contribution, meaning you can just add whatever you want to it without having to change it, with trying to add things to the game that make sense within the game's environment. And I think that comes up a lot, quite a bit. And it's kind of hard to separate one of those things from another when it's taken in a way that means we're actively against doing this or that, when there's always a reason for it, or there's a reason why it wouldn't make sense or why it would make sense. So I think it's important to kind of take a step back and look at it in that manner. And again, this doesn't just go for like content or writing. It could go for code. It could go for graphics. It could go for anything. And at that point, if it does kind of feel that way, I don't know, people might be sick of hearing this, but plugins are also plugins, separate branches or repositories. Great way to kind of work around that kind of thing. And you can always go out there and advertise that as well as something that we might not be doing, but it still might be something that people like. So it all comes down to this kind of, there's a base precedence for the game right now. It is malleable, but it's not something that we would adjust to fit new things in. It's that new things would work around with what we're already working. So, and historically, over the years, we've had pretty good success with that. So,
I will admit, though, I do think that there was a lot more claiming and such is off limits in the past.
yeah,
We've definitely been getting away from that. And there,
Mhm.
admittedly, I think there is at least one or two places in the game where it's kind of I can understand getting this feeling.
Yeah.
But kind of working to get rid of those.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's kind of I say this every day. Don't assume it's like malice or just like it's no for the reason of no. There's always something beyond just the appearance of it.
Mhm.
And then at the same time, we understand what initial appearances might be like. So.
Right, on to the next question, and this is the last one that was submitted before we started. All the other questions after this, there's 6 more that people submitted while we were already talking.
Yeah.
How close do you think the game is to a 1.0 release? Well, if you aren't aware, part of the plan for the 1.0 release is to have both a Navy campaign and a Syndicate campaign done, so that there are 3 different main campaigns that you can go down, 3 different sides you can choose for the main campaign, the main storyline. Hurl says 3 years, question mark. Azure says 30 years. I will admit, we're not as close as I would like us to be,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think that things are improving.
Yeah.
And I would like to be there before I die, within the next couple years.
Yeah, I'd say 3 years is a good kind of like
2 to 3 ish.
like goal. Not like set in stone thing, but
Ebop says Navy campaign is always next year.
yeah, that's true. It's perpetually
It's
in
like
the
it's like
future.
it's like when we discover fusion. It's 20 years away, guys, but like 10 years later, it's 20 years away, guys. Or not discover, but invent fusion reactors. That is. Oh, Azure's actually said that. I unironically did not even read that when you said that. Great minds think alike. Doom says we'll look at the Navy campaign pretty quickly if someone pull requests one. I suspect. Yeah, but potentially we'll see. All right, let's rapid fire these last few questions here because we're only about 10 minutes left. Thoughts on expanding in-flight interactions with other ships, such as hails being more important and persistent with a UI element you can open, allowing you to talk to other ships with simple dialogue trees and get missions from them in flight. Yes, please. I do actually eventually want to add some sort of way to have hailing a ship be a trigger point for a mission. Right now, you can only... we can do that on boarding and when you assist them, like repair them, but we can't do that when you hail them. I do eventually want to have something like that. This next one says, this submission is a joke. Don't worry, I got you. What's the status on the Navy campaign? As we just talked about it. When will the Remnant balance and lore pass happen? Who will be involved with that? Honestly, don't know and don't know. Well, when? I don't think it's a pressing enough issue at the moment, at least in my own thoughts, that it's like, oh, we need to get this done immediately. It seems like it's going to be a piecemeal thing, though, because there's already like a pull request or 2 out there that are dealing with some of the balance concerns with the Remnant, and I imagine if those are dealt with, that people will open some others. As far as the lore and story pass, that's probably a bit further off. The issue with that is just there's bigger fish to fry in a sense. As far as who would be involved, Zijaz, of course, because that's his realm. Myself, most likely, and then in terms of balance, you're probably looking at Doom. A fair few others have been concerned with the balance, and then story. That's kind of whoever pitches in. Any plans to use the auto-disable repair attributes on existing ships? None that I have, but I don't know about anyone else. Yeah, Tybe says when it happens on GitHub. So whoever wants to be involved can and will be involved, referring to the Remnant changes. Yes. Doom says fried fish is tasty. Yeah.
Not sure.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I'm not sure what Nicholas, what you're asking then. You're saying to move the storyline stuff out of the code. What do you mean?
Oh, I think I've seen this idea before. Have two repositories. One repository is just the engine and the source code. Another repository is the vanilla game as a plugin. I don't know how helpful that would actually be, though. Yeah, Doom's advantage. The pull request count would be would look lower.
It'd be a little bit more to keep track of, that's for sure.
Yeah. And then the last two questions: AI.cpp refactor when and ship.cpp refactor when. Be the change you want to see
Yeah, I
in
was
the
going
world.
to say, another volunteer? Is this Azure volunteering again?
Ship.cpp dev.
Yeah, we'll have a dev for every text file or code file.
AI changes, I don't know. Ship.cpp refactor, what do you have in mind? Is what I would ask. There are some things that could use with a refactor, but the question is like, what exactly are you looking for? And I feel like any refactor I have in mind is not that big. I guess the main two things would be, I think Peter, did you look at this idea a while ago, having like a ship factory class that produces instantiated ships, so we can split the definition in the actual instance of a ship?
Yeah, I looked at some of those things. Yeah, just looked at them also today, but they are having huge merge conflicts at the moment because they stayed in going a bit too long.
Yeah. I will admit, I think that's something I would actually eventually like, is a split between a definition and an instance, because right now they're the same thing in all cases, basically. But yeah.
I was looking also into ship state machines to check if the state could be separated a bit from the definitions. But there are a lot of things to do, and there's not so much time, I guess.
Yeah, no small undertaking. So
Yeah.
So the answer is eventually to both of those questions. Doom says, I would like to see the code for scan interference refactored out of politics.cpp and into the scanning code in ship.cpp so that scan interference can affect the player's scan, and I can add that scan penetration attribute I wanted to add. Yeah, I do feel like there are some things that I sometimes scratch my head on. Why is this in this file? And I think politics and government are two of those files where there's like a lot of stuff in there where it's like, this could be, I feel like this could be in one file and not the other, or it could be somewhere different entirely. But that's a very case-by-case thing. That's all the submitted questions. Don't submit new ones because I'm not going to look at it. I've closed the tab already. I'm not looking at it.
We're coming up. Well, I mean, submit new ones if you want them next time, but we're coming up on the 2 hours. So this last couple of 7 minutes is going to be like rapid fire. Just throw some basic questions in this chat here, and we'll try and answer them real fast.
Yeah, rapid fire questions. What do you want to answer? What's been on your mind? Have you watched Attack of the Tro-Maggot? What?
No.
Never heard of it.
No.
I heard you're nerfing the AM core. May I ask why? I think Doom answered that already. The TLDR. Jinx. The TLDR is that it's just overpowered. It's massively overpowered.
Right now, Korg stats are placeholders. They need. I'm looking at getting a Korg rework done in the near future. Kind of waiting on some sprites right now, but now that we have Doom as a good balance dev, I do want to get back into that. So we do want to add a little bit more to the Korg, but right now everything that they have is just kind of what they have. It's not what it's supposed to be right now. So
Azure says status on the previously expressed ideas to create focus teams for the campaigns, in parentheses Wanderers, Syndicate, Navy, that have been talked about as a desired focus. Status is we haven't looked at it. It's just another one of those I've been busy type of things.
Yeah, we've been focused on this release and now the bugs for it. So
yeah, unfortunately there's just always something else to focus on.
Yeah.
Rising asks, when music gets into the game, or when we have the ability to play music in the playlists, can you put a call to composers in the Steam announcements? We probably could. I think that I like what Hector did with the artwork competition event thing.
Yeah.
and that got the attention of a guy who does actual like proper video editing and whatnot, and he
Yeah,
made
with
the
the trailer.
trailer, which was awesome. So I can definitely see us doing something like that in the future for our composers.
Nick asks, plant or not? It's not a question. So, Plant Seed Bird Song. Same with the music.
Yeah,
Someday maybe we'll have like planetary music, like Eevee did, maybe.
I want a
But
lot of ambient sounds on most
yeah,
planets.
yeah,
I
and 4 planets.
Yeah, I remember. So there's this game called Alona Shooter. It was an old Flash game that I remember playing, and whenever you were in between waves, it was like a wave defense game. Whenever you were in between waves inside the walls of the castle, there was like this ambient track playing of like people talking in the busy streets and the clip clop of horse hooves as they walk past, and you can hear the wheels on the wagons behind them.
Mm-hmm.
I went back to it recently because I was like, oh, I wonder if I could like pull that sound from the game and use it. It was actually way more compressed than I originally remembered. So I was like,
Yeah.
you know what, the quality's not actually good enough for us to use. But the idea is there.
Yeah.
I would definitely like to use stuff like that for like rural planets, and like we would have a different like bustling city sound for urban planets. And then like
I already
bird
have one
songs
for
for
Relay
like
Player.
less inhabited planets, and of course it would be able to like shuffle through them, so it's not constantly the same thing over and over again.
If you find the Relay Planet, I already have one. It's supposed to make you go nuts. Okay.
Yeah.
Nick also asked real quick. I have one last question. How do you discover the places? If you don't want spoilers, don't listen. But if you do the main campaign and or
Just do the main campaign. Just do the main campaign.
Okay, yeah,
That's
just
it.
do that.
Finish
Just
the
do
main campaign.
that. Yeah, main campaign. You'll find it.
You'll
find
find
it.
out at the end.
There's a lot more you're missing. Go find it.
Yeah, like all the names we've been throwing out for like different alien factions, they're all out
Yeah.
there. You'll find them.
Yeah, just
Yeah. Doom said the same thing. Just complete the campaign. Hurl says, "Don't spoil the cloaking device." We already mentioned the cloaking
we
device
already
earlier.
talked about
I
it.
think I actually saw Nick say, "I didn't even know there was a cloaking device."
it's one of the first things in the announcement.
Here's the
It's a
thing
new
though.
cloak.
It's actually already spoiled if you go to the controls. There is a cloaking device setting that you can change. So it's not like we're really spoiling anything that cloaking devices exist in the game. So yeah.
And if you can't,
Spam bot on Twitch. Let's go. Ban.
oh really? Oh dang.
Yeah. Yo, for if you want to buy cheap followers, go to this sketchy link.
Go to this link. It's just a bunch of letters.
Nick says that setting should only appear once you found it. We unironically could do that now. Now that we have global conditions, we can save a global condition to your save file. If ever you found the cloaking device, and then somehow we would have to add a way to the preference panel to check your global conditions to see if we should or should not display a setting. People have suggested that in the past, and we couldn't do it before, but now we unironically probably could. Somebody open an issue right now.
Only one
Bryson
person.
says,
Not
on my
everyone
way to
heard
do that. Okay, cool.
Okay, no one else do it then. Not everyone do it at once.
Yeah, Type says we also need that for
Stop
ships with
spoiling.
inbuilt cloaking. Yeah, we would want a mission that sets a condition based off of if you have the cloaking attribute on any of your ships. You wouldn't just want to check for the cloaking outfit, the cloaking device. Also, key binding conflicts would be weird. Doom says, I have no idea how we do that, but I like the idea. Yeah, I think, the key binding conflict one, that is actually a concern. We would need some way to indicate, or we would need some way to exclude hidden preferences from the key binding conflict check, because we wouldn't want it so that whenever somebody binds something to C, that it then says, hey, this is conflicting with something and you wouldn't know what it is. Although now that I kind of go into it in more detail, maybe this isn't the best idea, just for the sake of not spoiling people to the existence of cloaking devices. Because even if we do make it so that you can't conflict with a hidden preference, we would still have an issue where somebody then unlocks the preference and it turns out, oh hey, the whole time something was bound to C. And I didn't know it. Now I have to rebind everything, or rebind stuff. WeirdNet says instead of hiding, he doesn't say this, but he kind of implies it with his little comment here. He says unknown command :C. So the implication there being, instead of hiding the command outright, just show, hey, there is a command that is bound to C, but you don't know what it is yet. I like that idea better than just outright hiding it.
All right, last minute here. Fast questions, go. Really fast, small ones.
We've been doing them.
No, like really fast. You know,
Can we
like
get a
we're at
gotcha element?
No.
Maybe.
Keep going. No.
Maybe.
What's the point of that system? Something with the coalition. Keep on.
Oh, what's the point of any system? Does every system
True.
need a reason to exist?
Yeah. You can mine stuff there. Yeah. Okay. Keep going.
Yeah. What will be the focus of the next release? Bug fixes.
What we're
If you mean
currently
the one
doing right now
after
is-
that,
Yeah.
merging story. I want to get through a lot of the story stuff that's out there. And then potentially some more balanced follow-up. Good, he says.
Yeah. Can we get Gary slightly on attributes like Diablo item stats and abilities?
No.
No.
Yeah, Doom says please.
That's
No,
a
yeah, sorry.
horrible balance concern.
Yeah, this is not that type of game, unfortunately.
Yeah. Sorry.
Dating sim
Dating
when?
sim. Go make one. Plugins.
Yeah. Why are some empty systems jumpable, but most random ones not? Are you referring to like the millions of star systems that exist in the galaxy versus the number of systems you can actually find in the game? The answer
Gameplay.
is this is a game.
Yeah. The answer is gameplay.
Yeah.
We're not doing a one-to-one universe like
Yeah,
some of the
that's
games
another
do.
one of those we don't need a lore explanation for everything.
Yeah.
It's a video game.
It's a
Some
creative
things are just
decision.
gameplay. Can we hire dedicated mercenaries which can't help pilot but could be better with combat? So, like for boarding, what would the distinction be between that and just buying better hand-to-hand gear?
Or just having a stronger ship with more bungs.
Yeah, I think that because of the fact that you can already increase your hand-to-hand combat capabilities through other means, it doesn't make sense to be able to add
Yeah.
dedicated mercenaries. If you're referring to hiring your own escorts without having to purchase the ship itself at a cheaper price, that's also been discussed
I
in the
like
past.
that.
Potentially. Type of thing.
Yeah.
The main issue is how would we implement it?
Yeah, and how to
Because
balance
I think
it.
the original idea was added to the job board, but that sounds weird because then you could be spamming accept to a bunch of jobs and you accidentally accept something that
Yeah.
actually removes money from you.
Eevee had its own separate UI element for something like that, but
Yeah, like a whole
that'd
dedicated
be
section
kind
to
of a
purchasing escorts. Yeah, I don't know.
yeah.
It's
be
given the
kind of an
fact that you
undertaking.
can so easily just buy new ships. I don't know if we would.
What if you go to buy a ship, but you can either buy it for yourself or buy as escort?
Hell says, don't we already have escort missions? Yeah, but you are being paid to escort the other ship. The idea
Yeah.
here is to have another ship that you pay to escort you.
Yeah, so like a daily fee for it to be flying with you until you can't afford it anymore, or until you release their servitude or something.
Nick says, lore explanation for the empty systems thing. Hyperlanes are expensive / complex to build, even by aliens, so only done so very sparingly. Humans found the abandoned ones they built. That is the lore. The question isn't a matter of the hyperlane. It's a matter of the jump drive. The jump drive can jump between systems without needing a hyperlane. So why can the jump drive only jump to certain systems still?
Yeah.
The answer is gameplay.
Secret
Those are
item
the
that lets you
systems.
go to places you want to go to. You'll find it later, maybe.
Yeah.
Do the main campaign. Yeah.
Harold says, "Oh, I thought that one was merged after the code things got in." No, I think we still closed it.
Yeah.
I think we added like all the mechanics for it. I was like, oh, if we would need such and such more mechanics in order to actually make this work.
Yeah.
In a proper way that we would potentially add to the vanilla, but we just still have never added to vanilla, and I don't think we will. I think if you want to add something like that, that's sure make a plugin for it. It's actually very possible to do now, whereas before it wasn't. But now you would just now I think we kind of it doesn't fit. I feel it would kind of be weird to put in there. Will random hyperlane / system objects make a return? I don't think we ever had random system objects.
What
But
do
if
you
you're
mean
talking about
random?
conditional links, the answer is yes. We just need a way that doesn't bog down the game.
They're called asteroids. True.
Yeah, Earl says whoops.
We're not making any Sky generative experience if that's what you're asking.
I do actually want to redo conditional links for 10.9.
Yeah, and I think that this conditioning listeners that I was talking about earlier, they might be helpful there. Just let the links listen to the conditions instead of regenerating everything every time.
Yeah. That's definitely one way to do it. I think the other way would just be because the problem with the way that it was set up is that it used a condition, or it used a function that's only intended to be used very sparingly, and it recalculates every single link in the game. really, we
Exactly.
probably could have just added only the links that do have conditions to a list somewhere and said, okay, iterate over these and figure out if we need to recalculate anything.
That would already be a big improvement as well in the meantime. I
Yeah.
agree with you on that one.
And also,
Um,
that function itself should probably only be called once when the game starts. Right now, it's called anytime an event changes links between systems. But I wonder if we could make it so that if we change a link between two systems, then all we have to do is, well, check those two systems. How do we need to change things? I think the only potential difficulty with that is I think it would be a bit more... Because another concern is, are they still within jump distance with one another? I'm going to need to put more thought into this, but the general idea is we're calculating way more than we need to.
Yeah.
And that can be
yep,
improved.
I did see one of your comments that you wanted to have a different type of link, but I preferred not to be visible to the user if it's a conditional link or not.
Yeah, that was another idea.
All right, 2 more questions. Go.
Yeah, we'll do the last 3.
1. You mean Everways? Yeah. 2. Okay, that counts. Next one. 2 more. Come on. To be ready to. Or effectives? No.
Maybe.
Okay, maybe it depends. Very, very someday in the far future when we
Do you like
have all the
cats?
campaigns
Sure.
done.
Favorite reviewer? I'm not
Yeah.
allowed to answer that question. I'm not allowed to pick favorites. It's like a parent with
Yeah.
their kids, you know? Like, a parent can't just go up to the kids and be like, yeah, this one's my favorite. I'm not
War
allowed
between
to.
Porg and Pug.
Eventually. Actually, it
Huh?
already happened.
Yeah, it already happened. True.
Cosmic loot boxes? That's just the gotcha mechanics again.
Favorite
merchant?
merchant? That guy over there. That guy.
It was
All right.
Iraqi.
He's no longer a merchant.
Now I can't choose. Because the thing
your
is, all
color's
my
blue?
favorite merchants get promoted anyway. To privateers.
Interesting.
I guess.
Nepotism. It's almost as if the whole point of the privateer role is that you have been noticed by a dev, basically. How do you become privateer? Is it not like leveling? We don't have a bot
talk
that does
about
it, but it's effectively just like, have we noticed that you're active? Which now that I say that, Benny Lux has been here for like 3 different of these streams. So privateer, there you go.
Congratulations.
If I notice some more of you next time again, then Ebop has been here a few times too. It's basically just a rank that says you're not a total
Yeah.
pleb who just lurks.
So is
and nothing
Arkin
else.
though. I thought.
I mean, if you've noticed him a lot, then go ahead and bump him up.
Can I do that? Oh, I can do that now.
Yeah. Can I be privateer stagiaire? Sure.
Yeah, where's my privateer? What the heck?
There you go. Oh, now everybody wants to have it. Okay, no more, no more.
I had all of it. Yeah. Okay. All right. You're not gonna be late for dinner now or anything, are you?
No, it's actually at 5, but I just need time to get ready and have to
Okay.
drive there.
Ever
because it's at a
since that
restaurant.
one time that we caught you, I'm just like, okay, I gotta make sure Derpy's not gonna be.
And then, oh yeah, what was that? Like
Yeah.
that was just like
Dev
a
chat.
dev chat, and I was like,
Yeah.
hey, I need to leave at this time for something, and then we went over, and I realized, oh wait, I was supposed to leave like a half hour ago,
Yeah.
and I just stuck around. It was like a Mother's Day. Yeah, that's what it was. It was a Mother's Day dinner, and I didn't go.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Benny says it's because I'm unemployed. As to
Well,
how
there's two
you're always
Bennys
here.
now. Hold up, there's 2 Bennies now.
Benny Lux. Well,
Yeah, but
Benny Dictator hasn't been posting. Actually, I think I did see one message from him.
I
Oh yeah,
saw
he's
that
in here.
before.
He said like, well, you're always streaming at 4 at 5
You
p.m.
2 have to
or 5
fight
a.m.
for
rather.
the title of Benny now.
Yeah, you have to fight. All right.
Like how there's,
Let's wrap it up here then.
2 dooms. Yeah. All right.
So, thank you everybody for being here for today's campfire chat. Thank you for asking questions, because that's the whole reason we're here. I hope you enjoyed the answers. A reminder that we did release a new version last week. If you're on Steam, you do need to opt into the beta in order to actually play it, because it's one of our unstable
and
releases.
GOG.
And it's also on GOG. You do also need to... I need to remember that we have GOG now. If you're on GOG, you do also still need to opt into the beta branch. We will have a stable release that is just a bunch of bug fixes for this most recent update. In a few
At the end of
weeks,
the
I
month.
think it's
Yeah.
the 22nd, so toward the end of the month. A
Break the
reminder that
game
we
as much
do
as you
these
can.
campfire chats every first Saturday of the month. So the next one will be July 6th. July 6th. Get ready for that one. We have a submission box that you can add questions to if you're not going to be there live, or if you just want to ask a question and don't want to forget it. Anything else to go over? Oh, the replay of this will be up on my Twitch channel, and Hector will upload it to the archive YouTube channel, the Stream Archive YouTube channel. I think that's everything. So, just time to say goodbye.
Eat your vegetables.
Drink water.
That shit's expensive. Not water, vegetables.
Dude is living on Arrakis over here.
Arrakis.
Stay in school, Sister. Don't do drugs. Yep.
Yeah. Don't do drugs. Well, weren't we talking about that being like the first thing we talked about earlier?
Yeah, we were talking about doing drugs earlier. If you showed up after that, don't check the
Don't do
replay for
them.
that point. We were just joking.
Don't do them. Yeah.
Just jokes. We were being
For
ironic.
legal reasons.
Play.
That was a joke.
Yes. Hurl says play test your pull requests. Yes.
Please, yes, please.
Or play test other people's pull requests as well.
Yeah. Test everything.
All right. Well,
All right.
yeah.
See
Thank you, everybody,
guys.
for coming, and see you next time. Adios.
See you.